Today, the right kind of company, the right kind of org chart has to have both a remote component and a localized component. So our company has 8 people in the United States and 16 people in other countries. And those 8 people in the United States are also in different metros. So, California's got the biggest chunk of them just because that's where we started. But there's people in other parts of the US as well. And I believe that this 1/3, 2/3 model is phenomenal. It's extremely painful when you get started with it because of the way that you have to grow and because of the fact that most people don't know how to make things work with virtual assistants. So we have 16 full-time virtual assistants. They all work US hours, so 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., unless they're attached to a property, and then they work that property's time. And none of them are allowed to work like as consultants. It's like you're an employee just like us. You get holidays, you get time off, you get all of those the typical benefits, but you work your nights, because in our case the vast majority of those people are in the Philippines. Some are in India, but the vast majority are in the Philippines. And that org chart of 24 people, I believe, is really one of the key strengths of our organization. And the fact that 2/3 of our employees, don't call them contractors, don't call them virtual assistants, we don't use them that way. The fact that they're offshore gives us an incredible scale of growth. So it's not that I have any lower payroll than any of my competitors. I don't. In fact, I would argue that if you took 5 of my competitors and we matched up our org charts, we're spending the same amount on payroll as they are, but we're getting more out of it. So there was no intention at any point to make this about saving money. It isn't, and in fact, you might end up spending a little bit more. It's about boosting your growth, 10xing your growth. We've been able to do 16 syndication projects in the last 2 years, and we know of maybe one other company in our entire nationwide space that's done 16. There's 2 reasons why it's painful. The first one is we are not used, we're not set up, we're not structured to work with people that are remote, especially if they're not from the same culture as ours, right? So the Filipino culture is very different. It's a very soft, very polite culture. They tend not to make suggestions unless you really push them. So it's a very compliant culture, and that's a problem because Americans, by our very nature, are very non-compliant people. And so there's a cultural clash. And so very, very difficult for people to do that. We grow up learning that when I want to bring in an employee, I'm going to have that employee shadow some existing employee, or I'm going to have them shadow me. They're going to sit in the chair next to me, and we're going to talk. That is actually the most inefficient, the most non-scalable way of bringing on employees, but it's the standard. It's the standard. And maybe 90% of employees in the US are hired that way. What really should be the right way of doing things, and that's really your first roadblock, is understanding that there are better ways to onboard employees and better ways to train employees and better ways to hold them accountable. And that the first hurdle is really learning that. When as a company you learn that, you become super powerful because you're onboarding a different way, you're holding people accountable a different way. So that's, to me, that's the first hurdle. The second hurdle is that the overall quality of people working as virtual assistants, now I will use that word, is indeed low. A lot of people have had bad experiences. A lot of people have felt that they didn't get value for their money, even though they were paying, 20% of what they would pay in the US. And there is something to that. There is something to that because people who are willing to work nights for years are probably not going to be the most impressive people that, that live in those countries. So there's something to that. And so what people don't have is a quantitative step-by-step way of figuring out exactly how to wean hundreds of candidates and figure out the 1 in 100 or 2 in 100 that are highly superior candidates. Those are your 2 roadblocks to basically making this work for you. It's really not about fit. Obviously, we interview a large number of them. So the first thing that we do is we standardized our platform, and we standardized on a platform called Upwork. There's cheaper ways to get virtual assistants like onlinejobs.ph or onlinejobs.in. But what we found was by staying with one platform that has a lot of tools to monitor these employees and gives us data about how productive they are, it made an enormous difference to the outcome. So the first thing is we hire them through Upwork.com. The second thing is that on Upwork.com, you have, let's say just in the Philippines, you probably have 200,000 people. And what folks have not spent any time on is actually going into Upwork.com and filtering for quality. And so what we did was we spent a lot of time in our company learning how to filter Upwork.com for quality by experimenting with many different kinds of, virtual assistants, by interviewing them and seeing if that improved quality. Luckily, all of this is recorded. We have a seminar. It's called, it's on our website, multifamily.com. So we took this, and it's not one of those seminars where you're basically talking like I'm talking now. It's not one of those seminars where you're doing PowerPoint decks. It's a seminar where I'm actually running you through a 15-minute demo of specifically how to use filters in Upwork. I can tell you that our filters, and it takes maybe 3 minutes to use those filters, our filters bring the total talent in the Philippines from 200,000 to 2,600 people. So it filters it down to 1%. And those are the only people we go after to interview. So it's very hard in a podcast format to give you the answers to that, but they're straightforward filters. So I'll just give you a little teaser. Number one, we only hire people that have worked on Upwork.com for at least 3,000. Let me think about that. For about 3,000, 4,000 hours. So that means that they work 2 years full time. We only work with people that have had at least 20 different employers on Upwork, which means that they've understood a lot of different companies' systems, processes, software. They've gelled with a number of different providers. They've made the necessary changes to their lifestyle, and so on. So, there's all of these filters. And as you go through those filters, we look at people where their feedback, Amazon style, their feedback is over 96%. Most people think 90% feedback is good. I can tell you 90% feedback is pure garbage. You would never want to employ somebody that has a 90% feedback on Upwork. We try to stay as close to 100 as possible, but because we hire so many of them, we end up with 96% being our cutoff, though I'd say that 2/3 of our employees are over 98% in terms of their feedback, which is such an incredible feature. I mean, I don't know Thomas Castelli. I don't know what he's working like. So maybe at the best, if I want to hire Thomas, I have to basically go to Brandon and say, hey, Brandon, how's Thomas? And Brandon might say, yeah, he's good. Or maybe Brandon doesn't want to, seem like an evil, ex-boss. So he's like, yeah, no, he's really good. The point is this: quantity. Where can you find a place where you can look at American employees and see for each employee dozens and dozens of ratings and comments from past employees? We all love Amazon ratings, right? And they're not perfect, we know that, but they're a million times better than just going to some no-name website that has no reviews. Because I've done that, and I've come up with horrible purchases. That's why I trust Amazon. Well, Upwork has those millions of reviews on these people. And we don't just look at the star ratings, 96% and higher. We actually go in, click on it, and actually read the reviews. And when we read the reviews, here's what we are not looking for. So here's a bad employee. This is going to shock you. It says, employee was on time and completed his work as per directions. Bad. Employee did what he was asked. Bad. Here's the only kind of employees we ever invite to interview. This is a phenomenal employee. This was a star. This was a superstar. Of all the people I've hired on Upwork, this was the best. Those are the people we look for. And now we end up with 0.1% of the top virtual assistants in the world. First, you have to understand that the process of managing other people is really all about you training yourself. 90% of management is about what you do, not what other people do. And so we found that we had to really understand ourselves as managers, and we realized that we are not the kind of people that will go write 20-page manuals on step-by-step instructions. So we started searching for some very, very simple, very, very quick ways of giving instructions to employees. And we found two different ways, and I think I can demonstrate both of them to you. So I'm going to click manage here on my phone so I can actually show this to you guys, and you'll be able to hear it. But before I show you that one, what we do is we use a tool called Loom. Loom is a plugin into Chrome, right? So when you're opening the Chrome browser, you've got Loom on the top right. And whenever we want to give people instructions, whenever we want to give them a process or a task, the first thing that we do is we click on Loom and we click record. And now, just like this podcast is being recorded, it records our screen, it records our video, and it records our audio. And now we start talking about what it is that we intend to do, all the different things. We might open a Google Doc. We might start saying, well, put this in this spreadsheet and put this in this row and make this pivot table, blah, 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 blah. And think about it. If you're just talking for 2 minutes, even with all the oops and oh, let me start over again, even with that, in 2 to 3 minutes, you can go through the same content that would normally take you 2 to 3 hours to write with screenshots. When we click on stop, Loom immediately sends a copy of the video to the cloud, and it makes it copies the URL of that video into our clipboard. So now we open an email, a new email, type the employee's name that's supposed to get this information, and then we do something that's magical. Here's the part that most people forget. So let's say I'm supposed to be giving instructions to Brandon, right? So I record this 3-minute video. Hey, Brandon, do this, do that, open this spreadsheet, blah, blah, blah. And then if I just send it to Brandon, there's no accountability because Brandon can choose to do it or choose to forget it. And he can also choose to defer it. Maybe he doesn't forget it, but he just pushes the can down. So we have the following 4 or 5 systems to prevent this from happening. The first thing is we never send an email just to Brandon. In the to line, we also send an email to Asana, which is our project management system. Asana allows each project that's in Asana to have an email address. So for example, if Brandon is my virtual assistant and sets appointments for me, I'm going to type in Brandon, and then I'm going to type in Asana space appointments. And now what is happening is when I send that, and I'm very careful with subject lines, because guess what? As soon as I click send, Asana is going to take what's in the subject line, create a new task inside of that project. It already knows which projects because I use the email address of that project. And then it's going to assign to Brandon this task. Okay. And now Brandon has to go into that task, listen to the 3-minute video, and then guess what he has to do first? He has to type out their understanding of that video into the task. So instead of me doing that job, they're doing that job. And when they're doing that job, it means that the onus is on them to really understand the video because they have to type it out, right? And then the task is assigned a timeline, right? And by the end of the day, they have to make sure that they've got the due date in there after conversations with me or a Slack chat with me. And then we have another employee that every Friday publishes a list of every Asana task in the company, all of the people that have those tasks and how many people are past due. Published on a Slack channel week after week where everyone can see who's slacking. That's definitely a pun there. But basically this gets published. Those people are then given a random amount of time. So we used to say, oh, we're going to check again to see if you've improved it and gone and cleaned up your tasks in Asana. Now we don't. We say, this week there's too many people that have too many tasks past due. A random check will be conducted. Sometimes we do the random check in an hour, and sometimes we do it the next day. So now people are like, oh my God, I'm over the cutoff, right? Because their row is now marked in red. So now those people run around and get their tasks all updated. So by Tuesday, and the report comes out on Monday, by Tuesday, everyone in the company is on time with their tasks. They may not have completed their tasks. That wasn't the point, right? But they know what their tasks are, and they can't forget about those tasks. So task management is all about having another virtual assistant. As you can imagine, this is done by a person in the Philippines, basically staying on top of the project management system so that nobody can be late on their tasks. That gives people a huge incentive to work hard. So we love Upwork because Upwork puts a tracker on the employee's computer. And that tracker is both a clock. So if for them to bill any time, they have to go into Upwork, select the employer, because some of them may be working with more than one employer, and then they have to say start, and now it's tracking their time. But it's not just tracking their time, it's actually tracking to see how busy they are. By looking at their mouse movements, their keystrokes, it's assigning a number to every segment of the day. And what we do is we have a virtual assistant that goes into Upwork and grabs every single employee, every single person that's on Upwork. We grab their previous week's data from Upwork on how busy they were. Each day, when the employee finishes their day, they have to go into Asana, into a task that's created, and they have to post they have to post something which says, this is what I did today. And out of a ranking of 5 to 10, right, with 10 being I'm dying, 5 being please for God's sake give me more work, right, and so on and so forth, they have to put in a ranking every day. And you might say, people have tried that, it doesn't work. Yes, but there's a catch. When people do that, let's say somebody says I'm an 8 every day, okay, or they say I'm a 10 every day, they just want to bullshit you and they're not really doing anything, they're watching Filipino YouTube, right? Here's what happens. Each week on Monday, we take the average of their ratings, let's say their average is 9 out of 10, and then we go to upwork.com, download its ratings, and we match them up, and we build a bar graph, one that has an orange line and a green line. Well, we also do the public shaming this way by posting that graph on Monday and saying, you guys all know this, right? The orange bar, which is Upwork's rating of you, has to be higher than your own rating of yourself. If your rating is higher than Upwork's, then you have an inflated opinion of how busy you are. But if Upwork's rating is higher than yours, that's really good because Upwork thinks you're working really, really hard. So people might think, well, yeah, but they can randomly type keystrokes. Yeah, but you'd have to do that all day long, type in random keystrokes. Most people just get to work. So bottom line is, now we know exactly how hard they're working because we're matching their expectations of how hard they work with Upwork's, putting them together, making it public, making the public shaming obvious who the most productive employees are, and also making it obvious who the least productive employees are. Side benefits are incredible. We've had employees, I mean, normally in a normal company, you see employees just bitching and moaning and complaining about how they're working harder than everybody else. Well, we have a reverse company. We have employees coming and telling us, hey, I've been looking at the trends. It looks like George, I mean, this guy's just working himself to death. I see what's going on with this guy. I know he's very hardworking. And so employees actually start giving us feedback and say things. We've had employees constantly come to us and say, hey, I have a little bit more slack. Can I take some of George's tasks? Now they know where those tasks can come from because they're seeing the impact of what's happening. And then we've also had people who've come to us and said, you know what, I'm not busy enough. Could you really help me? And both of those things are very strong for a powerful company so that you can have happy employees and happy employers. So it's all about having a company where things work by themselves instead of you forcing them to, which is a standard case. Most good actions are being forced. But why force it if you can just have openness and things come into equilibrium by themselves? It became so cumbersome that what we do now is we create Asana templates. So for example, if we're doing a syndication, there's 300 to 400 tasks connected to that. So we create a template, and that template has all 300 or 400 tasks with the Loom videos in there. The plate spinner, my partner Anna Myers, basically goes in, launches that new project, and in a 1-hour kickoff meeting assigns the 400 tasks to different people. Or actually she assigns subtasks, subsections, and then people go in and basically take those tasks on. So by doing that, when a person leaves, all we have to do is take their tasks and assign it to the new person and tell them, go into the tasks and watch the videos. If you tie too many tasks in, then you have to have too many updates, Tom. So it's better to keep Loom videos to about 2 minutes, and you break them. Let's say you have a really major task with 5 sections. Well, record 5 different videos. That way, if one section changes, you're not messing with the other videos.